All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another VantagePoint AI YouTube live session here. So excited to have everyone joining us for today because we're really going to talk about kind of where is the biggest growth potential in 2026 and really how to identify that within the markets. Is it in one sector? Is it in multiple sectors? And how to identify that ahead of time so you can catch those bigger waves of growth throughout the markets throughout the year. So do me a quick favor. Make your way on over to the comment section for me. Let me know that you can hear me okay. Always like to make sure that sound is going and that you can see me on your screen. We're going to jump over into our VantagePoint here in just a moment and dive into some live forecast. I know that's what you guys are looking forward to today. That's what I look forward to on these sessions, is diving into your questions on the live predictive forecast here in VantagePoint. So make your way on over to the comment section. I'm going to go ahead and keep an eye on that throughout our session today, but we are going to talk sector rotation, how to identify bigger trends, stronger trends, and well, how to let AI do the work for you. So let's go ahead and get on over to our VantagePoint software, and I'll check the comment section, make sure that we're all set to go. All right. Well, hello from Vancouver. You must be nice and cold. I would say we're cold here in like the low 70s today, right? We had a cold front come through. So I know you can laugh at my joke. It's fine. Because I know we're a little bit spoiled down here in Florida. But hey, Michael, glad to see you from Atlanta today. Let me know, where are you joining us from today? That would be lovely. I'd love to know where you're from. I'm located here locally in Tampa, which is just a few minutes from our headquarters. So perfect. All right. Looks like we're kind of ready to roll throughout our training session today. Keep in mind, guys, I am not AI, right? So I can't answer every single question. I will do my very best though, right? I always aim for 100% questions answered. But if I do miss something in the chat, please just type that in. Or if you need more information, you can always go to VantagePointForecast.com or go ahead and like and subscribe. You can also subscribe to our other videos so you get those notifications as well. Like I said, I know we'll be dropping some resources in the chat throughout the session. So yeah, just keep engaged, ask questions as we go along, and when I ask, don't forget, be ready on those ticker symbols. So, oh, perfect. Colorado, Atlanta, California, gosh, all over the place. Well, very good. Glad to have you all joining us for today. So, as you can see, I have our software already pulled up, some forecasts. We can take a look at whatever you guys like, but I know a hot topic right now is Tesla. And it also happens to reside in some of those sectors that we're talking about when we think about things like energy or even tech, right? Tesla kind of runs right along that path with the big movers, those Mag 7s. So why not identify just how to read the software first? So let's just kind of back it up. Start from the basics. Is there anyone in our session today that is not using the VantagePoint software yet? And that's okay if you're not. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing about VantagePoint, but I want to make sure that even you know how to read the predictive AI forecast here in our session, so that way you can have some takeaways for today, some sort of golden nuggets, if you will, of knowledge. That way you can take and apply to your own trading strategies also. All right. Perfect. All right. Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. If you are using the software, hello VantagePoint family members. If you're not, well, welcome to VantagePoint for the very first time. Glad to have you here. So let's go ahead and dive on in. I'm going to keep it super simple for everyone here. All right. And that's the beauty of VantagePoint, is the ability to keep it very simple. And so the first piece that we have in reading any of the forecasts here on VantagePoint is the trend, right? That's what most traders strive for, is just what is happening in this trend. When can we identify reversals? When are we expecting some weakness in the markets to navigate through that position management side, and then overall when to exit and take those profits? So starting with the very first piece, identifying those trends, identifying new opportunities in the market. That's where we're going to see a shift in color in the software. So if you take a look just at our Tesla chart, one of those famously volatile stocks, even with the volatility here in Tesla, we can see that we are still getting a very clear shift in that market direction and at what time it's shifting, right? right before we really see this big run up. And hey, that's what every trader wants, is to get in a little earlier to catch those runs, so that way you can catch more of that movement. Movement means money in the markets, right? So let's take a look first and foremost. I'm just going to grab my pen here at that first signal. First signal is that crossover, blue line above black line. Great, awesome. That's trending up, right? Keep in mind everything that we're analyzing right now. I'm using Tesla as an example, but this is educational, right? So I'm not a licensed advisor. I'm not going to give you any trading advice, but hey, with the technical analysis and the artificial intelligence, you can make those trade decisions all on your own. I'm confident you can. So have some confidence in yourself and the AI that's going to give you that information. But you'll read the charts the exact same way, no matter what asset class we're looking at. So keep in mind, stocks, we're going to read them exactly how we're about to go through. We're going to then use that same concept over into the ETFs to identify those sectors that are moving as well. So you want to pay attention to this as well. So looking for that crossover, again, green and the trend shifting to the upside or moving up would indicate a bullish expectation, or essentially that stock is going up. So that old adage, buy low, sell high. Well, hey, here is where we see that low starting to form. And so with that, that's our first point of what I call confirmation. And ultimately, we want to get to a point of total confirmation. Confirmation is going to equal confidence in the VantagePoint software. So keep that in mind. So let's take a look down right below that. We have a crossover, but we also have another predictive indicator. This is the neural index. That neural index is going to show that bullish expectation or confirmation here with that second point using the neural index. Third point is going to be our predictive differences. All three of those going to be moving up and in the same direction at the same time. So we can see that happening. Those three predictive differences, which is actually the strength or momentum of the trend, confirming that we do have enough strength to potentially turn this ship into a potentially bullish trend at this point in time. So with that third piece of confirmation there, all three of those moving up, that's going to give us nice confirmation of the shift or reversal to a bullish potential trend. Now there is a fourth point of confirmation. I'll point it out. It's right over here on the right hand side of your screen. And if you'll notice, there is a gray candle here. Now, let me just do something real quick for all of us, so that way you don't have to put on your readers if you need them. And if not, well, it'll be easier on the eyes. So I'm just going to zoom on in. All I did was just press that little plus and minus like we're zooming in on a map, right? So who doesn't love a good trade map? That is exactly what we're seeing here. So grabbing my pen, you can look at this predictive trade candle. Yes, I said predictive, and that is going to map out your predictive trade range for the day. And so if we look at this predictive trade range, you can in fact click on the predictive trade range, and that information is going to be displayed right on over here where we have the predictive high at 457.40. The predicted midpoint means right smack dab in the middle of that candle, and then the predicted low at 440. All right, so this is going to give us a predictive high and a predictive low. We're going to talk about timing your entries or better entry pricing. If you're looking for an uptrend, maybe entering in towards the lower portion of the trade candle, expecting that movement to trend up. So we'll get more to that later, but just a little kind of tidbit on how you can use some of those individual predictive indicators to help you with your trade strategy. But when they all line up, that's when we have that full confirmation here. Now I'm going to give you guys some time frames too. So we're going to take it another step further. VantagePoint is predictive, but it's predictive on a 1, 2, and 3 day time frame. All right, so we have a little bit more customization here as well. So when we look at the crossover, right, that crossover where the blue line switches to red, right? You can see that right now we don't have that timing crossover. We're on a 2-day trend prediction. All right, so this is not confirming that over the next 2 days this is going to turn into a bullish trend. But if we look at that shorter term, this is a 1 day. So if you are a shorter term swing trader and you like to maybe catch something over, a 1 to 3 day period, anything within like less than a week, right? You can switch over to the short term crossover right here, just one click of the button. And that's going to give us an earlier signal on that crossover. That earlier signal for shorter term traders who like a more aggressive strategy. then fantastic. You have a crossover right here for you. Now, we're still going to look at those 4 points of confirmation, right? We're just getting an earlier signal, and this can help you for the progression of the trend as well. So we'll likely use these in our sector evaluation here in just a moment. But you can see here we have a crossover to the upside, blue line crossing above the black. That's that first point of confirmation. Take a look. We've got that second point of confirmation, and then all three of our predictive differences moving up with a bullish predictive trading candle. Now, I know that many of you have been watching Tesla. So let's just see, does anybody know where Tesla is at currently? Let me know in the chat if you do. In those comments section, we can pull it up together here, but always good to see if you guys are paying attention to the markets as well, right? All right, so Tesla with a range today. Let's talk about the range because that's what we're really looking at from a predictive trading candle standpoint. Range for today was 451 to 443. Well, guys, we stayed right there within our predictive trading range today. Maybe not maybe not hitting as quite a high as we would have liked to have, but still right within that predictive trading range right here, right around 451 was our high. Never went below the low, so we just had more of a consolidation. But hey, if you can stay within this predictive trading range, think about how powerful that can be for setting stops, right? Because if you were worried that Tesla was going to bounce off of resistance or something here, then, using the predictive trade range to set a stop can be incredibly helpful because, well, now if it doesn't hit that stop, you're still in, right? But if it reverses using the predictive data and hits that stop, you've saved yourself a lot of heartache, maybe locked in some profits there as well. So again, another way to use the predictive capabilities here in VantagePoint. Now, if we, again, take a look at that medium-term crossover, we can see that that blue line is starting to shift to the upside. So this is helping to confirm a potential progression in the trend. Of course, we're also looking at our other predictive indicators. The longer-term crossover, again, shifting to help confirm as well. And then I'll flip this over to our kind of more conservative indication here using our T cross long level. And I'm just going to back this out so everybody can see. If you are looking at things from a more of a position management standpoint, you can also use this this triple cross view where we have three predictive moving averages on the screen at the same time. Everything you're seeing here is all included in VantagePoint that we're looking at so far. So if you take a look at this predictive triple cross view, you can see, I'm going to zoom back in. Now you guys can see the overall trend, but you can see this is turning yellow. So we're shifting potentially from bearish into consolidation. So a weakening bearish trend and then possibly into some bullishness. Now I'm not trying to outpredict the predictor. We're going to wait for the software to update tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to confirm. But regardless of whether you're a shorter term and like those earlier entries, maybe you're a little bit more conservative setting up for that move. Either way, you can look at a chart on VantagePoint and gauge whether or not you have confidence to enter that position. You can also manage that position as well and identify those exit points when you get that crossover to the downside. Now, if you like to short the market, well, great. That's fine too. You can certainly do that. There's plenty of opportunity. We would just use the signals inversely, looking for red and, well, lines that are moving down, right? Moving averages that are trending to the downside. But those aren't just moving averages, those are predictive moving averages. So does anybody want to see kind of what is driving Tesla? I can open that up for you. Just go ahead and just type in Tesla if that's the case. Because I don't want to spend too much time on the back end of VantagePoint if you guys don't want to see it. But if you want to see the drivers of some of these markets, let me know in the chat. That'll just signal to me, hey, open that up. And that would be great. All right. Perfect. Yeah, all right, so let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up those market details for you guys. Here's the inner markets. This is probably one of the coolest things to see in VantagePoint. You can see Tesla right here. I don't know, many of you might be surprised by kind of what goes into impacting the movement of Tesla. Now, some of these markets may cause Tesla to go up. Some of them may cause Tesla to go down. Some of them may even cause Tesla to consolidate or move sideways as well. And so looking at the movement here, in the chart behind, all of that data comes from this kind of wide web that's weaved from the intermarket analysis here at VantagePoint. That's one of the patents that we have. But of course, looking at that intermarket analysis, it's important to remember that you're not just simply looking at a chart of Tesla when we go back to the view behind us, but we're in fact looking at everything that's impacting Tesla. And that's the predictive data that gives us that 1, 2, and 3 day time frame looking ahead, allowing us to really see the trend beginning earlier on into that 2-day outlook, and then the 3-day outlook finally with the more conservative of the triple cross with all three predictive moving averages together. So interesting, here you've got the gas fund, but some of these like MP Materials, right, AppLovin, some of these make sense. Some I would have never thought, maybe like Toast, Canadian Apartment Properties. It's a REIT, but hey, I would never have guessed that one. Certainly not out of the others. I would have maybe thought, I don't know, some energies or other things of that nature, maybe some other vehicle companies. But nope, these are the intermarkets that VantagePoint has forecasted. You can see the green in ETF. Of course, the Qs are in here. You've got the gold shares, the diamonds. But how do we identify the sectors that are really moving right now so we can line up those individual stocks with the sectors? Do me a favor, because I want to just get a gauge on where you guys are at today. Tell me how many of you are looking at sector rotation or that sector shift that happens in the market before you're looking for individual opportunities? Who does any form of sector analysis? If you do, just type in sector into the comment section. That'll just help me to kind of see where we need to start that conversation today or that education. So again, type in sector if you are already doing some analysis there. And hey, if you're not sure what that is or how to do it, then let me know in the chat as well, because we're going to walk through all of it. But just to get a gauge on where you're at. All right, so some of you are looking at sector rotation. What sectors do you guys typically trade in? Let me ask that, right? Sunny, you couldn't have put it any better. I actually love that comment. You're checking sector rotation daily. What's hot and what's not, right? What is in that wave of movement? What's got the money moving into it right now? So yeah, what's hot, what's not, right? All right, so XLP is one of them. Any other sectors you guys want to take a look at as well? Angel's looking at sector rotation. Okay, a lot of you are now. Wow. Okay. XLP, XLV, tech. Gotcha. All right, so let's take a look. Anybody looking at gold? GLD, right? That's actually a major market mover here. And we can see, especially when looking at overall trends, it's nice to put things on the triple cross, just so you guys are aware. As long as we see green, we're in that strong bullish trend. That's going to give us nice confirmation here. So we've got an established trend, which is why we've switched over to that triple cross view, allowing us to see that, hey, this bullish trend is got some strength here. It's got some integrity behind it, if you will. It's well established. XLB, yes, some of you did say gold, the diamonds. Yeah, and that's good for market assessment as well. So if you're looking from a market assessment standpoint, you could look at things like the Qs. We saw a little bit of that in Tesla, didn't we? We could also look at the diamonds, which is DIA, not to be confused with actual diamonds, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average, those major indices. We could also look at the SPY. Let's go ahead and turn on the SPY here so we can take a look together. I'm just pulling up these markets from our market panel over on the side. As long as we forecast for it, you can, trust the predictive indicators and forecasts here in VantagePoint, of course, with accuracy of up to 87.4%. Pretty powerful stuff what we're looking at here. So let's start with gold. Again, I switched over to that triple cross view. So when you see that triple cross view, of course, that's going to be primarily for position management, looking at the integrity of the trend. So just going to grab my pen here so we can see. You still have those pieces of confirmation giving us good confirmation on the potential movement for gold. So for those of you who typed in gold and wanted to see that, well, hey, you're probably, pretty excited about that move that's been on recently here, right? SPX, yeah. So we'll focus on the SPY for that one, Ron. I'm going to have very, very similar movement as well. So here we can see the SPY. Take a look here. Medium-term crossover up, right? We can also see the triple cross moving right there. So you can see that movement expected for yourself. And then, of course, using that predictive trading candle as well. Now, with things being slightly down today, you can even still see, though, with that low, we ended right around 693.29. I think we were at 693.87. So again, that's where, hey, are we still seeing higher lows? Are we still seeing higher highs? The overall trend, right? We don't want to let one day sort of, run us for a loop. We want to look at the predictive indicators to say, all right, what's really happening here within the market. And 6:30 p.m. tonight, we'll see, are these indicators still giving us bullishness, or are we expecting to see some weakness? If we see some weakness, there might be some larger impact there. If we still see these all moving up with good confirmation, then that's going to give you the strength and the confidence to possibly remain or expect that bullishness moving forward. So this can help you assess risk for future positions as well. And then, of course, we'll jump back to the diamonds. You can see that happening here, right? And then the NASDAQ sort of flat for today, but let's take a look at the Qs. And well, hey guys, look at those predictive differences. I couldn't have picked this better myself. So thanks guys for these recommendations. But you see here, look, 2 out of the 3 strength indicators are just really sideways here. Anybody questioning whether or not we may be seeing some consolidation happening there, right? Now, who uses support and resistance? Because I do have the capability to add on a couple of more advanced indicators. I don't care if it's support and resistance in VantagePoint or support and resistance in your trade platform, especially if you're not using VantagePoint just yet. But let me know in the chat if you are using support and resistance to evaluate kind of key levels of a potential pivot in the trend. That'll be really important to assess. So what I'm going to do is just come to our indicator panel over here. As you can see, we've got several indicators, advanced indicators you can add. But let's take a look at those verified support and resistance zones. Just as easy as that. Pick the indicator, add it to the chart. Very simple there. So anybody wondering why we might be seeing some consolidation happening here or some stalling out of this price movement? See all that red? That red is equivalent to or maps out your resistance levels. So when we see resistance, this is typically going to be some downward pressure on price. You can see those red arrows pushing down. Those are each individual resistance levels that have been established previously by price action. Support and resistance levels, take these notes down if you didn't know what support and resistance was, but really support and resistance is past pricing points that can and will likely have an impact on future price action. As a trader, you want to know at what point, at what price point really is price likely to, continue its movement, or is it going to stall out like it reached a roadblock and it's got a detour a little bit? Sometimes with a detour, you've got to go around to move forward. And so sometimes if we hit resistance, we've got to come back in order to push through further. And so that detour can cause a lot of heartache if you're not sure what to look for. So make sure you're evaluating support and resistance levels as well. Now, some of the indicators you'll see here on VantagePoint, everything except for the support and resistance is included in VantagePoint. There are some additional indicators you can choose to add if you want to. Of course, it's optional, but always like to just provide a little bit more here on our sessions so you guys can get really a better way of assessing the markets. And again, whether you're using support and resistance in VantagePoint or on your individual platform, always want to make sure that we're checking those key levels for potential, points of pivot in the market. And that's going to be same thing for the sectors. Again, you can see these charts look the same on the ETFs as they do on the individual chart. So let's check the top growth sectors coming up here, at least right now, and how to map those out throughout the rest of the year. So if you're using VantagePoint, taking a look at how the sectors are doing currently is actually very easy. So we're going to create what's called a scan. And that scan is actually where you're going to utilize IntelliScan. The IntelliScan is a really powerful scanning tool here within the VantagePoint software. So super easy to use. I'm just going to come right on over to our IntelliScan and just simply create new IntelliScan. We can do that by just clicking new IntelliScan, right? It's like opening a new file. All right, I'm actually going to pin this top of the page to the main screen so it doesn't disappear on us. There's lots of ways you can format the software to your specific liking, but we talked about some different timing crossovers, right? The short term, which is very sensitive, to the medium term, long term, and then even the triple cross, moving from most sensitive on to most conservative. And so looking at that, oh, you're drawing manually. Okay, careful with that, because if you're drawing support and resistance manually, and I'm sorry, I just saw that comment. I'm gonna just back up a moment, because if you're drawing support and resistance manually, you run the risk of missing some key points. If you're drawing support and resistance manually, do you have as many points as I do on the 3-month time frame for the Qs? And better yet, are you assessing all-time highs or previous support levels that are even going back to September of 2025 or the year prior? Because we've got some key support levels down here where if price reaches, you've got to be very cautious. But look at all of this through here. Are you able to calculate that? Maybe, right? It certainly would take probably a lot more time than I know I'd want to spend on that, because you could spend all day drawing support and resistance levels on your chart for just one market. Doesn't leave a whole lot of time for trading and probably not very efficient. So not trying to knock it, but hey, use technology to your advantage, right? And support and resistance levels can be seen very clearly and established, verified support and resistance levels, in VantagePoint or several other platforms. So let's talk about, I'm circling back around now. All right, I said my piece on support and resistance, right? So I'm going to come to our IntelliScan feature here, and I'm just going to add a couple of those crossovers. So we talked about the short-term crossover, the medium, the long, and I'll even come down and grab the triple cross. So these are all of our crossovers that we looked at on the screen down here at the bottom. All we did is say, hey, VantagePoint, let me look for those crossovers and filter for those types of movements in the market where we either have green for bullish or red for bearish on those different time frames. So that's it. Same crossovers on the chart, same indicators on the chart that we use in the scan. Now we can just see everything in this sort of at a glance list view up top. So let's do one thing. This is a sector identification scan, right? So let's come over. Let me grab my mouse here and grab our sectors. I personally just like to grab the spider sector. It's probably the easiest way to grab those sectors. So we're just going to grab the full spider drop down here and add that on in to our scan. All right, so now what we're seeing is things that are going up or things that are going down. All right, so for those of you who might have missed this, all right, the same indicators that are in the scan are down here on the chart. So for things that are going up, you're gonna see a green up. For things that are going down on that crossover, that time frame, you're gonna see red down. All right, really, we try to keep it simple, right? So let's take a look at these together. If you're looking to identify nice bullish moves and sectors that have potential coming up here in the markets, do you want a sector that's moving up or do you want a sector that's moving down? I know it's a bit rhetorical, but I really want you guys to think about this. You want a sector that started that shift to the upside. So we want to look across the board. Here's the SPY, right? We want to look at a sector across the board that's moving up. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have some down days, all right? That means that, hey, overall, this market is trending up. So this could be a good wave. Now, hey, if we see a pullback, that could be a potential dip scenario where you could, possibly buy the dip. That's totally up to you if it meets your trade plan. But identifying these moving sectors is super important, whether it's healthcare, whether it's tech, whether it's energies. Let's identify where that money is flowing into the markets. That's a really, really key piece there. Now, does anybody evaluate money flow? Let me know in the chat. If you want to see kind of where that money flow is going, let me know in the comments section. Do you know how to evaluate money flow? If so, again, let me know in the comment section. But ultimately, we want to have that neural index trend moving up, short-term difference trend moving up, all of our momentum or strength indicators moving to the upside, and then of course that predictive trading candle moving up. So you can see across the board, we're just looking for all things to be green. If we do see things starting to shift to the downside, we know there might be a little bit of weakness in there right now. So it might be best to look at a different sector or sort of focus your efforts or energies in another area of the market. All right, so let me just clear off some of my nice fun scribbles on the screen, and let's scroll down. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to do this. Let's pull this all the way down so we can see a few more markets at a time. You can even just use your down arrows to take a look. All right, what's moving up, what's moving down, right? If you want, you could even say, well, just give me everything that's moving up. Let's identify where we've got up across the board. So now we've got some key sectors moving to the upside. We can see everything is up now, including those crossovers. You can put them in everything on that direction. So we're just filtering and sorting for the direction. So we've got some key movement in some areas of the market like the SPY. So we've got aerospace and defense. That's a big one. We've got industrials, metals and mining. Guys, it's going to be even things in like your basic materials type category. Consumer staples, right? Have you seen some of the consumer staples that have some good, like really great movement happening right now? And even some of the Euro stocks as well. So now we've just identified some really key areas of the market that are moving in the, well, in the up direction. I don't want to say the right direction. There's really no such thing as right or wrong direction in the market. Again, money's made off the movement, whether up or down, right? So if we identify these sector movements, then how do we put that to work when we find the individual stocks? And so that's where we can actually do a scan for individual different types of opportunities as well. So let's clear out the markets that we've already put in the scan. You can save these scans so you don't have to recreate them, but I'm going to show you just how quick it is to create them if you want to. So if I clear out my markets here, I'm just going to right click and delete all. Just right click within the software and then hit yes. It's going to remove those markets. All right. Now keep in mind we were looking at industrials, aerospace and defense. You know what? Let's do this one more time. I'll show you just how quick it is. Now that we have those filters set up, you can get them right back just to drag and drop into the scan. So you can take a look. We could even open all of these if you want. So we can right click and just say open chart. So if we see, we already looked at the SPY, but let's go ahead and look at aerospace and defense. Wow, look at that. All right. Anybody want to catch that movement, right? Well, we can see that in fact, we had that movement starting back really beginning of November with the crossovers. And I'll switch over to that triple cross view so you guys can see that triple cross view. Yeah, it's been up since really that movement started taking off. Beginning of November, we saw that earlier indication from those shorter term crossovers. Moving on into the triple cross with trend strength, we saw that crossover and that bullishness start occurring right around early to mid-December there. So we see that bullishness starting to really take off and then things from there just moving. And hey, looking to continue that potential movement as well. So let's take a look at some of, I opened these up so that way we could, of course, take a look. Again, looking at this movement here, we can see materials and mining, right? Looking at the industrials. Let's take a look and see what the industrial trend is moving at right now. Boom. We've got some great movement, some great flow within these individual sectors. Consumer staples, these are going to be like your consumer non-discretionary, right? They're staple products, things that people need, right? They're not going to go away. Even, toilet paper, things of that nature. And so when we have the identification of these sectors, you can very easily then go sort of cherry pick opportunities within these sectors that you know the market is moving. Why not move with the flow of money movement as well? I know some of you are already doing some sector evaluation. Here's a much easier, much faster way to do that and be able to identify those areas of the market that you can really focus those efforts and energy on to finding new ops. So now that I walked us back through that one time, I'm going to go ahead and delete those markets. And then I'm just going to come on over and say, all right, instead of ETFs, instead of the spider sector, let's talk about the US stocks. Let's plug in the US stocks and see what is moving from this standpoint. Before I do that, we'll set up a couple of different types of opportunity identifications. I'm going to look for my points of confirmation all moving up. I'm just going to plug in the US stocks. And yes, I just literally, it's kind of fun, right? You just drag and drop those stocks right on in and wait for it to load. All right, so very quickly, you can see we're looking at, almost 1,900 different individual stocks. So over 1,800 individual stocks within the software. VantagePoint is pulling through those, sifting through those, sorting through those predictive indicators and actually using those predictive indicators as predictive leading indicators 1, 2, and 3 days in advance to find opportunities that are going to move now. All right, so you can see we've got the neural index trend set to up. That would be looking for opportunities where we see the neural index green. It's also looking for those 3 predictive differences to be on the uptrend as well. So we can see that happening. Looking for the predictive trade candle to be going up. I've also got close price in here just in case you want to sort based on those different types of strategies as well. And then you have, maybe you don't trade the penny stocks, or maybe you're looking for lower dollar price per share stocks. Either way, you can use close price to evaluate that. Then, of course, the short-term crossover. This is where we can say, all right, well, hey, give me opportunities where the VantagePoint software says it looks like this could potentially be shifting into a bullish trend. So let's set that short-term crossover to up. All right, now that brings us down to 377. So we went from 1847, right? And then we had like 475, and now we're down to 377. We could also look for additional confirmation where that medium-term crossover is also going up. Now we're down to 320. Now, for those of you who maybe want to look for that crossover just happening, maybe it's just occurred, look for that crossover maybe at 1 day. So now we've really narrowed down the search criteria, but let's add one more factor to this scan. Let's come back and say, give me that category. And you can see the category is actually right here where you can type it in the search bar. But if we look at our category right here, now we can see where these stocks are located within the sort of sector tree, if you will, the market tree. So notice we have technology, services, technology, healthcare, right? So if we open up this category space just a bit, you could even select, wasn't basic materials moving, right? Those industrials, energies. I think we also saw something in aerospace and defense. So cybersecurity might even be in that area as well, technology, right? But also too, we saw consumer non-cyclical. That's that consumer non-discretionary or consumer staples. And so we could even just hit right here, consumer cyclical. And guess what? That sector is moving and expected to continue moving. And now we've identified assets within that movement as well. And so with this, now we can start to really identify areas of the market that are truly kind of pushing to higher prices. So again, looking at, I'm just going to scroll down. We can open up all of these. So I'm going to go open chart, just highlighted them and then open them all. Let's look at Philip Morris. This is the importance of sector rotation. So I'm gonna just put these side by side for you guys too. So I'm gonna pull out the consumer staples. our scan has now done our job, right? It's done the job. It's found these assets, right? So consumer staples really starting to move, right? We've got some really nice movement here and strong movement as well. So look at how close these trends are going to follow each other. This is the importance of market confirmation. Why? Looking at markets ahead of time, like the sector rotation. Here's your earlier identifying factor on the sector, and then we can start to see these markets moving as well. So this can be a nice precursor to, hey, we've reached a potential pivot point, and let's go to add support and resistance, since we already talked that earlier. Boop, boop. Add those on. All right, let's come over here, indicators, and add that on as well. So we can see where we hit that support level. In fact, we hit really this support level first, couldn't actually break through. We tried really hard, right? Price tried to just continue pushing down past those levels and couldn't, so bounced back up. Are you guys seeing how quickly you can identify that shift in sector, and then also the individual stocks are typically going to follow? So you can certainly take a look at that sector first. And of course, here we identified this using the category. We went from like 475 assets to like 5, right? How many do we have in the scan? Might have been more. Oh, 4. There we go. I knew it was pretty close. So now you've got a potential reversal here. Here's Sprouts Farmers Market. Potential reversal. Look at your predictive moving averages. Look at your neural index. Look at your predictive differences. And then, of course, we can see, support here. So bounce off of support, will we be able to continue pushing higher with that sector movement continuing as well? Of course, look at your individual charts also. But let's take a look at Tyson Foods coming on in. Again, nice run potentially to the upside with that crossover as well. So when we look at this market, we already have confirmation from the sector. So we're moving into this with possibly a little bit more confidence as well, right? Because we know that this sector rotation is occurring and it's in your favor. So as we take a look at some of these here, even moving through, Tyson Foods is all the way up at what, 60.08 today? Gosh, so this is like way actually right just above that predictive high today. So looking at the crossover, let's evaluate this one, because this actually looks like a really strong trend that started a couple of days ago. So this is where I also want to highlight the importance of looking at that early identification and then, having confirmation and to execute as well. So taking a look at that short-term crossover, you can see we actually had that short-term crossover confirmation, total confirmation here several days ago. So if you look at Tyson here, boom, we've got that crossover happening to the upside. That's again 0.1. Then we've got 2. Neural index is bullish. All 3 of those predictive differences moving up, and we had that predictive trading candle moving as well. So if you see this at 6:30 p.m. the night before, that's going to give you a lot of confidence to plan your trade for the next day. So if that's the case, here's your potential day of entry. So let's just evaluate that. Gosh, that was a great move. Gotta love it when the scan works the way that it should, right? So if you take, and let's just kind of get in somewhere towards the lower range. Hopefully you're using that predictive trade candle, right? But let's see where we're at. Right around 60.08 is where we ended today. I'll just put that right there. So we'll go ahead and do a profit calc. That's 4.5% in just 3 days. I'm not quite sure I know a trader that wouldn't take that, but hey, everyone to each their own, right? And you can also see we did bounce off of that level of support as well. So we had support sitting right there. We knew that we were likely at support because we had this previous support level. This is the importance of having those previous support levels sitting right there. And then, of course, seeing that shift in the market movement, and then potentially even breaking through resistance. So our next level of assessment would be right up at 60.50. Looks like we came up or are likely coming up to test that in the coming days, possibly tomorrow. So questions on anything we reviewed so far, how to identify that sector movement. That's really what you want to do, because you don't know, is it going to be healthcare? Is it going to be tech this month? Is it going to be energies? and identifying where that market movement, where that money is flowing. Is it in the overall markets because we've got a confident economy right now? Or are we kind of moving into more safe haven assets like gold? Are we looking at consumer staples? So that's one key piece, is also understanding how these sectors work together. Right now, we've got some major movement on the sector of consumer staples, which tends to be more of a safe haven asset, along with gold. We'll take a look at our two markets that were really trending up. We saw gold, and we also saw the consumer staples. So let's come back to our scan here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and open up that basic materials. We also had some basic materials moving to the upside as well. So let's look at some mining stocks. Oh, look at that. All right, so I'm gonna pull up gold just so we can do some comparison. I love a good compare and contrast here so you guys can really see. I just come over and find our gold. So I'm going to grab gold. We'll just pull this over to this side. Okay, well, looks like we had a very similar trend setup happening here where we had a downturn, right? You guys see that happening right on right around 1022, right? Well, we saw that coming down as well through this market, and then trucking back on up, that dip to the downside, and then possibly that confirmation here. So let's look at our individual crossovers. Oops, a little click too soon. There we go. Short-term crossover. There we go. We've got a bullish crossover. Let's see if we had full confirmation back here on 1.7. All right. On 1.7, we had a bullish crossover to the upside. We also had that predictive neural index. We also had at least two of our predictive differences moving to the upside. So again, a little riskier. We didn't have full confirmation here because we didn't have the 3, but hey, to each their own, right? You would know that getting in if that's what you chose to do. If you chose to wait, then hey, wait for that medium-term crossover where you have that full confirmation. Again, your trade strategy is your trade strategy. Make sure you're following your trade plan to make sure you have confidence. Now here we have all of that confirmation. We have total confirmation here, a bullish crossover, bullish neural index, bullish predictive differences moving up as well. And so of course, seeing that movement along with confirmation from the sector of that movement to the upside can really help you to have the additional confidence when it comes to trading those markets. And this market's up 15 up to 1587 today. That's where we landed. And again, I didn't check these ahead of time, guys. I'm just I'm rolling with the IntelliScan. All right, so if we take a look right at 1587, so if you were to even look at a potential entry using the crossovers here to here, let's take a look at that move, right? Yeah, almost 7% in 2 days, right? All right. So not everything's always going to be, just a huge jump like this. Sometimes it might be closer to 2, 3, 4% per day. But again, I don't know any trader that doesn't want the consistency of 2, 3, 4% per day. Everyone's going to be a little different depending upon your trade strategy, but having the confidence to execute those and make those decisions earlier so you're not second guessing after the trend has started is important. And a very key factor of that is really identifying what sectors are moving so you can go find those big growth opportunities right now. I mean, great. If something's going to move in December, right? Put that on a watch list, but don't you want to know what's moving now? Right? I mean, that's the idea of trading. I mean, unless you're a long-term investor, we're like, oh yeah, this is going to go up in December, I'm just going to get in and hold. That's a whole different story, right? But if you're truly trying to trade the markets consistently as a swing trader, then identifying the current movement in the market is what you need to focus on. And the only way to do that really is to identify that sector movement, flow with the trends as well. Well, I don't want to say the only way, but let's just say maybe a smarter way to do things, right? I'd rather work smarter than harder, the old adage, right? And let the software do the work for me. I'm sure I sound like a broken record when it comes to that because I always say, just let the software do the work. Well, hey, that's why not, right? Why do the work if you don't have to? So let's go ahead and if you could do me a huge favor, let let me just take a look at the chat because I had some questions come through. What's your short-term period? Yes, the short-term period is a 1 day for that short-term crossover. And this is a great chart to go through on this because you can see really the progression of that trend. So I'll just open it up a little bit. I know I'm circling back in the comments, but like I said, I always like to make sure that no question gets left unanswered if I can help it. So that short-term crossover is going to be a 1 day trend forecast. That is going to be a bit more sensitive. You can see even in this larger trend that we saw previously on CNL that did also line up with the sector movement, but you can see the individual stocks that are moving within those sector, maybe even helping to drive that movement. The short-term crossover happens here on 11/24, so I'll just go ahead and place that little line, little marker there for us so we can see. Now, if I switch over to the medium term crossover, this is a 2 day trend forecast. So it is going to be a bit more conservative in its signaling because it is incorporating a little bit more data. So it's going to smooth the line a bit, not be so reactive. And here we can see that we actually have a crossover the following day. So you can see that progression. Short term is going to identify things typically a bit earlier. Medium terms, that sort of happy medium when it comes to the confirmation. And then I'll switch over to our long-term crossover. This is our 3 day predictive moving average. So it has 3 days of predictive data built into that line. And you can see that crossover. In fact, we don't see that until the following day on 11/26, giving you additional confirmation that, hey, this trend is probably in for a bit of a run. Sorry, wrong date there. You can see, there we go. We've got a full crossover at each of these points that I dropped that line though, guys. You can see you still are looking for that full confirmation from your indicators down below. So at each point of these lines that I dropped, you can see we've got a bullish neural index. All 3 of our predictive differences are trending up at the same time, indicating that, hey, yeah, we do expect the trend to move. And depending upon when you entered, you may then even choose from a position management standpoint to switch on over to that triple cross. And if you look at your triple cross, this can really help you manage the position because as long as the trend remains green, you've got good confidence there. All right. Now, for this pullback here, we can also see that the T cross long, that darker blue line, remains really as a guide for the trend. So I like to think of this as dynamic support in an uptrend or dynamic resistance in a downtrend. And I'll just point out a couple of pieces here for you guys so that way we can see. But if you look in a downtrend, which we're clearly in here, price will tend to pull back to that level. And again, that's going to be dynamic resistance that pushes price down. And so if we don't have enough momentum or enough push to really get through that resistance level, the likelihood of us continuing on, that's a failure off of a resistance level. So it try as hard as it might, it wasn't able to break through that level of resistance. And so of course, then we retest that level several times here. You can see before we're able to actually break through. And that's really where we get that full alignment from our crossovers, that total confirmation. Once we get that, the likelihood of that reversal is much, much higher. And then once we're in an uptrend, now we're in that established uptrend, you can see that T cross long level just acts as support. So as long as we can remain above that T cross long, we can see that potential reversion, failure off of a support level, which pushes price up, and then that potential bounce. So if you did get stopped out or exit up here at the top, just remove some of my drawings here. We're just making a Picasso. All right, so as we see price revert back down, once we see a level of support being hit, if support holds strong and we start to see renewed bullish momentum from down below, that's the potential or possibility of a bounce off of that support level as well. So lots of great ways to identify these types of trends. But hey, we started with the sector, right? We found great opportunities that, hey, forecast got it spot on for today, even within that predictive trading candle or that predictive range for the day. Yes, they do, Terry. I didn't even see your question until just now, but I'm hoping that I just answered that question, because when you see a pullback, how far is it going to pull back, right? That's always the question. So if you notice, our T cross long, our triple cross here still remains bullish because price is above, right? And even through here where we see that pullback starting. So Terry, this one's for you, all right? But I just want to go into a little deeper explanation. But you can see that if I switch to the short-term crossover, hey, look, we've got that crossover to the downside. How far is that going to fall? Well, the first profit target or first target for that fall would be then that T cross long. And you can see, I mean, price just hits spot on right there. If you'd like an example to the upside, then hey, let's take a look at that short-term crossover as we see that happening right here and again right here where that triple cross just shows us that T cross long level holds nice and strong through here, through here, through here, and then of course the crossover to the upside when we get that full confirmation. So you're very welcome. I'm glad that was helpful. That is my goal always on these sessions. So I know we went through ways to find new opportunities, identifying those trending sectors. Again, is it about growth over the entire year? Yes, but is it always going to be in the same sector? No. Right? That's why that sector rotation, the biggest growth is when you're following the money, whatever sector it's in. And so I help to reiterate that for today. Do you use the triple cross for target levels or the X predicts, the cross predicts? You could use the triple cross as profit targets in that reversion scenario. I want to be specific about that. But what are your profit targets? What is your risk to reward level? Are you a risk 1 to make 2, right? Are you a risk 2 to make 1? Who are you as a trader? That's also going to determine those targets and support and resistance levels, right? So let's just kind of put back on that support and resistance if you want on this particular chart since we got the question. Here's our support and resistance, right? So if we have our first crossover or even our medium term crossover here, what's our first potential target, right? Well, we can see using the support and resistance. After we break through a level, we'd have to have, so let me point this out too, because we have some consolidation right up against resistance through here, right? For those of you who are familiar with support and resistance, you guys know what to look for next. For those of you who are not, well, here you go. Take some notes, all right? So as we see that resistance level being approached, notice what our momentum is doing through here. We don't really have strong momentum to break through that resistance. It's not bearish, right? It's not pushing down, but it's also not giving us any strength to the upside. So we're just kind of banging our head against resistance here. But watch what happens when we start to get some strength and momentum moving in the trend. This is all identified by price action and predictive price action using the forecast and VantagePoint. So take a look. Now we start to see momentum, but this is a concept. What do you need to break through a resistance level or support to the downside? Momentum. You'd also like to have volume in there as well, right? So don't forget that the predictive differences down here can also tell you a lot about the strength of the trend. When are we starting to get enough strength to push through these key resistance levels? And it's not until we get those predictive differences moving up, right, where we really start to take off and we're able to blow through that resistance and say, you know what, we're going to put that behind us. So what's our next profit target? Well, hey, the next resistance level, right? That would be a profit target or at least a point of reevaluation. So reassess at those profit targets, reassess. Are you getting out and taking profits? Are you scaling out of the position? Are you reassessing your stop losses? Make sure that you're reassessing that risk and adjusting those levels to accommodate the new management of that trend. So using support and resistance, using the predictive indicators, obviously right here in VantagePoint, but most importantly, remember, we started out with the sector rotation, identifying the movement in the markets as a whole, and then looking for really good opportunities within that area that was already starting to grow. So the best way to grow in 2026, well, identify those growing sectors, focus your attention on the priorities, and just have confidence to trade your strategy. Have a plan, trade the plan, but make sure you're incorporating that sector rotation into that trade plan as well. So let me just clear this off. I think I answered everybody's questions for today, but don't forget to go ahead and type in like and subscribe, rather. Type in your questions always into the comment section. That's what makes these sessions what they are. All right. One question leads to another question, helps another trader, will help another trader, right? So that's always the goal here with our sessions here at VantagePoint, is just to provide you guys as much information, as much knowledge as possible. We want to be a resource for traders all over, whether you're using the VantagePoint software or not, whether you learned about support and resistance or setting profit targets and reevaluating. I hope that you at least took away that sector rotation importance today and identifying that money flow within the markets. That way, when it ebbs and flows, you're ready to ride the next wave and you know where to find it. So happy trading, everybody. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you on the next session next week, and looking forward to some more live analysis with you guys. We'll see you next time.